my kind of peeve, particularly on science fiction, were the weapons, because they were all over-designed plasticky things that beeped like pretend ray guns. And I had this idea, if I got World War II weapons, I could adapt them. And I knew I couldn't afford to buy anything or make anything. There was no workshop for us. So I went to the gun hire facility in London, who were friends of mine. They set me up with a little table, and I got the Sterling submachine gun, which I would have used on its own. To me, it's a science fiction weapon, but I thought I'd better adapt it. So I got some T-strip from the buyer who came in to help me said it came from draft excluder from a car, because this is an unknown source and people have assumed it was windscreen wipers, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't. It didn't have the same elements as wipers, because I had a roll of it. And that I stuck around the barrel. I dug around in their boxes of stuff, found some sights, stuck those on the top. And then I thought, okay, he described Han Solo as a cowboy in space. So I found the Mauser, which is a beautiful weapon. It's a science fiction gun, and stuck more sights on the top. And then I called John Barry, and I hadn't told anyone where I was, by the way. I called John Barry and said, you better bring George and have a look at what I've done. And George came and smiled. That was the approval from George. In those days, he didn't say much. And I showed him we could fire them on set. We had them on single shot. So you got a flame out the end, a bit of smoke, and the noise and everything. And I mean, they were just real. So he loved it. George stayed with me, and we made Princess Leia's gun together out of an old starting pistol. And that was it, really. That's how the whole thing started. We went forward to Fox triggered the film on December the 23rd. They got the budget down, and so we went to EMI Studios on the 6th of January, and the art department crew came in and construction, but because of cost, they booked us into Tunisia, and while we were in Leeds, John Barry took George to Tunisia because he couldn't afford to create Tatooine. John Barry had designed Little Prince for Stanley Donen and took George there and said, here it is, what I see in Ralph McQuarrie's painting, and we didn't have to do anything. I just had to dress the sets, and he had to build a few bits and pieces. But really, that was the kind of, it's such an enigmatic kind of part of Star Wars that it's a planet that looks different, but it's real and it's old and used. Again, this was out of necessity of budgets and out of a kind of determination to make a spaghetti western in space. It all came together. And we were then told we were going to be shooting in March, which left 2.5 months prep, which for any science fiction movie, any movie, is tight. So I knew then I couldn't make anything. There was no time in the workshops. And with my budget, with the weapons, I realized I could just rent all the weapons we needed. I'd stick bits on them. At the end of the shoot, they go back and be stripped down. And the cost was very little. That's actually why there's very few props for the weapons or anything, because they all went back and were disassembled. So I think to show you how the atmosphere was, when I'd found in Baptist during that time the crossbow, because Ralph McQuarrie had painted Chewbacca with another blaster. I found the famous now crossbow with the balls on the end. And so I suggested that to George for Chewie, and he changed the script, and that became his. And I went through a lot of the weapons and all of the stuff we needed, made them up with super glue, temporarily. And when we arrived, within a few days, they set up a big table and said, put out everything you've done, then we can show the crew what's going on. They came down, the very pompous first AD, the prop, all sorts of people were there. The prop from the floor, these are all part of the old English film industry, picked up my Sterling submachine gun, threw it at me and said, this is crap. Don't you realize we're doing a science fiction film for an American director? And they all went off to get me fired on the spot. And I was asked, well, what did you think? And I thought, I'm with the director. You know, this is what we're doing and this is what we're going to do. And it's going to be like this from now on. That's fine. I'm just going to stick to my guns and do what we think is right. And that's what we did from then on. And I was sent out to Tunisia fairly early. I got an assistant in to help me. And I was sent to Tunisia to have a quick look with John Barry and to sort out what we needed, because they wanted me to be with George and Les Dilley, getting the sets ready and dressing them for when we started shooting. And then I came back. I couldn't find this laser sword. And the point was that I couldn't afford to make anything for the sets, for props, for anything. So I had suggested that if I go and get aeroplane scrap, I could put that into the sets and make them look more like a submarine, more like what I thought should be an old used spaceship interior. They put me and the buyer in a little plane, and we went round 4 airfields in England, and I was just gobsmacked. And the first one, there were mountains of aeroplane junk. There were Rolls-Royce jet engines, Derwent engines, lying in the rain. No one wanted it. So I was like picking up so much stuff. I think 50 pounds, I bought probably half an aeroplane. And I knew that would work. I bought water piping because I needed lots of pipes. There was a telephone exchange being shut down, and the buyer said, they told us we can have it. And we went in there and just robbed it. We got everything we could, switches, pipes. And at the same time, I was looking at props, and I couldn't design or make anything, so I relied on found objects. And time was running out. I had to make the binoculars. That was the first thing we saw in Tunisia. And I told the buyer, my room was filled with junk, and it was broken cameras, broken film piece equipment. There was washing machines and calculators, anything. There's no computers in those days. And I put together with super glue 3 different parts of 3 different cameras, a movie camera, still camera, and stuck together, made Luke's binoculars. And I thought, for an audience to just understand exactly what they are on the front of them, I'll stick 2 camera lenses. I went to the camera hire store in London, Brunnings, and I knew them very well because we got all our equipment from them. Got 2 lenses, and I said, David, do you have anything here? I've got to make a weapon. It's like a sword, but it's in space. And he suggested a torch, which I said, no, that doesn't work. And then he pointed me on, there was a row of boxes underneath. There was a huge amount of storage stuff, and David rented out Graflex cameras to movies. They were the big press camera of the day in the 40s, 50s. First box I pulled out, there were 3 Graflex handles in the box, and I just held this one and went, there's a lightsaber. This is better than I could imagine. Had a red button, everything. And I took all 3, raced to the studios. I had some T-strip left over from doing the blaster, stuck that round, and I'd broken down a calculator that day, and inside with a bubble strip which magnified the numbers. that fitted into the clasp, and I called George and said, I think I've found the lightsaber, George. And he came to the room, held it like that, again, huge smile, it was weighty. In Cinema Alchemist, the book that I've written, because I'm the only one who knows all these stories, so I was duty bound to write it all down. They republished it this year, and they'd wanted a new foreword for it. They knew George wouldn't do anything. He hasn't done anything in Star Wars for 10 years. He's out. But I thought, you know what, I've never asked him for anything. I asked him, and he wrote a very kind foreword, and that's what he brings up in that foreword. That I still remember the day Roger showed me an old piece of a camera and suggested it was a lightsaber, and it cost nothing. And he says, and I think that was probably one of 15 things Roger did like that day, which is true. And so there was a lightsaber. We were so busy trying to get this thing done, we would never see each other, even the art department. And in my office, I had tea bags, a little fridge with some milk and sugar. And I also had packets of McVitie chocolate biscuits, which the film industry runs on. So they would all meet in my office in the morning at 7 o'clock and eat biscuits. And it was there, they said, what are we going to do about this blade? Because nobody knew what to do. And I suggested, I used to do art installations, and I painted front projection paint onto some of the objects, and we got it to glow. So I said, maybe that'll work. So again, oh, okay, Rog, you do that. We go down to the special effects for a big meeting. I made up 3 of these Graflex handles. They took the second one, drilled it out, and decided to put a motor in that would turn. The director of photography happened to be there, who then said, you're not doing that, it'll ruin my set lighting, and stormed off. And this was typical of him. George overruled and said, Roger, do it. So I did, and it worked. You can see that in the, because the only lightsaber fight in the first Star Wars is actually with Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi. And you can see them practicing with my sticks. They kept breaking because they were so thin, but it worked. You got a glow out of it. And also important was we'd made a decision the blades shouldn't go through each other. They should clash like samurai fights, which is great because, now in the films they always put the buzzing noise in and things. So that was the foundation, really.